Ah, the Mech Fans Toys Hot Soldiers debacle of scale and all whatnot. Well, you want to make the scale muddier? Let's discuss Pipes and Huffer. We used to have the case where Mech Fans Toys would be for the KO designs and Hot Soldiers would be for the regular designs, but as we've seen with Springer, that hasn't become the case. Now they're both sort of doing their own thing, although Hot Soldiers has kind of slowed down as of late, and now Mech Fans Toys is taking the charge. I think they're just combine everything anyway. When I first saw these, I thought they would be for the main scale with everything, but then, surprise surprise, it turns out these are actually only for mainline Chug characters, because they're this chunky and they're a proper Legends figure, although maybe just a tad bigger. That's not the problem with these figures though. The problem with these figures is that they're shit. And you wanna know why? Well, let's discuss them. Right off the bat, I just want to make abundantly clear that these were second-hand, meaning they were missing some of their accessories. No Diaclone mechs, no weapons, so I'm just going off the base figures as is. It's also why we've got Autobot symbols applied to them. Whoever purchased them had already applied them, and I didn't really want to remove them, so what we have here is what I got out of the post box. And right off the bat, oh, we've already got some issues here. The proportions are very reminiscent of the G1 toy, and as a result they end up looking pretty butt ugly. Now, I understand that going for G1 toy accuracy with the extra articulation is a great positive for some people, but if you're taking it at an objective standpoint, the proportions aren't realistic, and you've got the arms on display. Especially in the case of Pipes here, there's just nothing covering them up. Yeah, a lot of people will enjoy this sort of thing, but there is just not a good way of doing business. Even if you look at some of the other third-party Legends figures that are attempting to do full screen accuracy. Here, I'll bring in an example. I'm not going to review this marathon, but let's bring in Magic Square Puffer for a second here. He manages to pull off the Toon design while still making an attempt to hide the arms because of the way they fold up around there, and also the way that they're nice and elongated, and the way that this front section is properly proportioned. These front cabs are also not properly proportioned. If you look here, you'll notice that it's very squished, almost as if it has to become a backpack later on. Oh gee. I do like that they've gotten some different tooling from this one to this one, but they've missed out details like the headlights. There's a lot of paint that could be done on this that they've just straight up ignored, and I understand, these are supposed to be budget figures. Mech Fans Toys and Hot Soldiers go for more budget designs. But one of the things I absolutely can't forgive on this huge size are the messy legs. These are just such a mess. Even in blue, they're just done to such a lackluster degree. And can I say that the white in question here, it just looks off. It looks sort of dirty, and it really doesn't look nice at all. Although I will admit, pinned wheels and painted hubcaps, nice touch. Still, if we're going for a third-party Legends figure, they've clearly sapped a lot of the budget to try and add the Diaclone mechs, which I unfortunately don't have. But even then, that's not what you should be doing. These should be the main focus. The Diaclone mech should be the accessory, and accessories should not take priority over these figures. But I think the main issue comes down to the size given here. Now, I want to preface this by saying I am not a scale nutter. That being said, Mech Fans Toys committed to a single scale. Yes, they primarily knock off other companies, making an upscaled Legends version, but these are not upscaled Legends. Bringing in a standard Legion figure, you can already see that, well, things are off here. And then you bring in a standard Legends figure, and now you're starting to see the problem. These are mainly meant to scale with Chug figures. They're not designed to be cross-compatible as Warpath was. And that's a problem, because they've advertised their line being in one scale and then jumped ship to another. Now, I'm no scale nutter, I really have to keep prefacing that, but you were sold on third-party Legends. These aren't third-party Legends, these are third-party Chug figures. And that is false advertising. But moving on, your standard Siege Micromaster, your not so standard LEGO minifigure, and Crumbs. Given that these are retools of each other, their transformations are identical, identically terrible. The tolerances on these things aren't great in certain areas, but anyway, whatever. First thing you want to do is untab the legs, and they'll probably come undone when you do that. And then you fold down these sections here, and you're left with hollow calves. On a third-party Legends figure, they haven't even bothered. They could have had the wheels fold up to cover it up, but no, apparently not. Okay, whatever. You untab the arms from here, and then this is my least favorite part of the transformation. What you want to do is bring this entire backpack section up. Now, it's okay when going that way, but when you're going down, it's very poorly toleranced. It's far too tight, and I'm really concerned I'm going to break the plastic there later on, but whatever. It is what it is. You fold in these sections, and that'll allow you to bring the arms fully into place there. Like so, they rotate around like so. Sometimes they get stuck for no apparent reason. I'm not sure why they do that. And finally, you bring around the head. Pipes is exactly the same as Huffer. The only reason I showed Huffer's transformation is because he's easier to see because of the white background. And in robot mode, yeah, you can completely see this is not a third-party Legends set. I mean, they are sold individually, but you get my point. Like, you put him next to Warpath, and you can just see they're not in the same scale at all. And I'm not a scale nutter, but I collect Legends figures. And these are not Legends. MechFansToys advertised these as Legends, and then delivered something completely different, which is rather frustrating. But even putting that aside, these are pretty bloody lackluster figures. For starters, they feel super cheap. The plastic is incredibly lightweight, and there are so many hollow parts. In general, you've got basically 2/3 of a Legends figure's worth of plastic here. The sculpt work, I'll admit, is very nice, but they're lacking a lot of paint. Well, at least Pipes is lacking a lot of paint. Huffer has got a decent amount with his silver, but even then, there's just so much wrong with this figure. For starters, I've already mentioned this, you've got the horrible hollow sections at the back. They could have easily fixed that up, especially since these are third-party Legends figures that aren't held to a specific budget. But they chose not to because they wanted to cut costs, and that is a bit of an issue. I will admit, though, they do have standard, passable articulation. The head is on a ball joint, although it really acts as a swivel because there's not much extra movement there. You've got the ball jointed shoulders that don't get very far out due to these shoulder applications. I imagine Pipes goes a bit further. Ball jointed elbows that act as bicep swivels as well. The front skirt moves out, and it does actually help a little bit, but they could have easily engineered a waist swivel, but they chose not to because it was far too expensive for them. He does have a thigh swivel, but it's so tight that you probably wouldn't notice it, and I'm a bit concerned I'm going to break it if I overuse that. You also get a nice bend at the knee, but if the thigh swivel is just slightly to the left, it gimps the bend to the knee. In fact, does it even go sideways? No, it can only bend from straight at the front. Why is that? Of course, no foot articulation, but what do you expect on a figure like this? And of course, ye old size comparisons with your standard Legion figure, your standard Legends figure, and I'm starting to think these are even too big for that Chug Legends scale as well, so yeah. Your standard Siege Micromaster, and for all intents and purposes, it's a much more fun figure. Your not so standard LEGO minifigure, and crumbs. This figure is frustrating because they were advertised in a line where they were supposed to scale with smaller scale figures, even if they were a little bit larger than most of them, and it's not. It's supposed to be for Chug. But it's more frustrating because they're not that good. You've got hollowness galore, you've got weak plastic. The articulation is there, I will give it that, but in general, it just does not hold a candle to the competition, and they're not that cheap either. If you could get this or get the official Hasbro version, I'd still recommend the official Hasbro version, just for the fact that it's much better built. The transformation's clunky, I feel like I'm gonna break the damn thing every time I look at it. The heads are far too large for the body. It's just not that great a figure. And I know some people tell me, oh, you've got to have the MechFansToys Diaclone add-ons that come with it. That's part of the fun. No! You do not have add-ons to justify the base figure. The base figure has to be good on its own. You can't justify it with a bunch of random shit on the side. You see Ultra Magnus here. The base figure is good on its own. And then you've also got the combine mode. If the base figure was shit, I wouldn't enjoy the whole figure. And this one doesn't even combine. It's just the box with a mech that goes on the side. What's the point? So no, I don't recommend these figures. I don't think you should buy them. I think the Magic Square version is much better. So far, Magic Square has only done Huffer. They haven't done a Pipes yet. I might actually get a Pipes because this is one of Magic Square's better figures. The way the legs work is great, and I hope to review his figure in the future, maybe next year. But wanting to like a figure and then getting a disappointment when you arrive is one thing. What happens when you expect to not like a figure and it surprises you? Well, that's tomorrow's question.